Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Vet It Out. I'm Dr. Leah, and this is Dr. Lisa Dauten of Tri-State Veterinary Services, a large animal practice servicing Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New York. Welcome to the show, Dr. Lisa.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I would love to talk a little bit about your trajectory to becoming a large animal veterinarian. Now, Lisa and I both grew up in the same area. We actually had the pleasure of working in the exact same practice when we first came out of veterinary school. And now we're both owning our own practices and doing our own thing. But Lisa did stick with large animal, or what some people call farm animal medicine. So tell us how you got here.
Sure. Thanks, Leah. So I grew up with kind of a rural background. We actually grew up right in the same area, so you know what it looks like. But when I was a young kid, I always said, I want a pony. Dad, I want a pony. And my dad said no pony, so he got me a calf instead. And so I didn't have the ponies, but I grew up with cattle. So I grew up in 4-H, raising and showing dairy cattle. We had goats. We kind of had the whole menagerie in the backyard, very similar to what a lot of my clients have now. And basically, my passion started because when something went wrong with the animals, so if somebody got sick or this or that, I really liked, researching it and trying to figure out what's wrong. And I remember I used to call up Doc Doyle, who was the local vet at the time, and I'd say, this is what's going on, and this is what I think it is. And he would kind of laugh to himself and be like, sure, kid, but it's actually, let's just go with this, right? And so that kind of intrigued me. And also very cliche, but it's very honest, is reading James Herriot's All Creatures Great and Small. As a 14-year-old girl, that book really kind of honed in what I wanted to do with my life. And so after graduating high school, I went to the University of Connecticut. I majored in animal science, and I worked at all the livestock units there. I worked at a small animal clinic while I was there. I worked in the necropsy lab while I was there. So I kind of explored every avenue of animal science and animal health, everything from birth to death, and really decided that veterinary medicine was where I wanted to go. So after graduating from UConn, I went to Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana, and studied veterinary medicine there. So that's where I got my degree. And Purdue's a little different than some vet schools in that you're still able to what they call track. Mm-hmm. So I was able to focus the second half of my studies on just large animals. So I really focus on food animal or production animals. So basically, cattle, sheep, goats, and small amount of equine. And then after graduating, my first job was actually in very upstate New York. Mm-hmm. So Malone, New York, so like 5 minutes south of Canada. And I did all dairy cattle and, kind of Amish horses and stuff like that. And after that, came back to Connecticut, did some mixed animal work, so meaning small and large. And then about 2 years after I graduated, I decided to go out on my own and start my own practice. And so I built Tri-State from the ground up. And now that's what I do every day.
Yes.
And it's something. It's a choice.
Owning your own business is never an easy thing, but then when you bring animals into the equation and a lot of the emotion that comes with the clientele, a lot of emergencies, a lot of work-life balance issues. I mean, that's kind of the theme and what we're struggling with in veterinary medicine, work-life balance. And you are a relatively new mother as well. You got a human now.
I do. I have a whole human, and that's a whole nother ball game. But you know what? I found, and maybe I'm still naive to it, but I found motherhood to be actually taking care of a infant is very similar to being a veterinarian. Mm-hmm. And I think, I had no problem with the whole waking up in the middle of the night or, changing your schedule all of a sudden because, your kids thought otherwise, because
that's your life.
That's my everyday. So the flexibility and kind of the chaos that is motherhood is very similar to being a large animal mobile veterinarian. So that aspect of it, I kind of felt like I was trained for. Also, infants are just lambs. No, honestly, like they were like, "You're such a natural," and I'm like, "It's just a lamb that doesn't want a bottle feed. That's what this is." So no will to live on their own and just
Yeah.
hungry.
Very dependent.
Yes,
Yeah.
so it wasn't too much of a change from what I was used to,
Yes.
but
I mean, I think you're right. And I love seeing the photos of your little one
Yeah.
in the barn with you,
Yep.
hanging out in a stroller while you're working on cows.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is
We
going to
make it
be
work.
exactly. And she seems to be very good natured, and therefore she can just go on farm calls with you and hang out. And
Yeah.
that's incredible. I mean, I never went the human child route, but I had visions of me with a backpack and a baby in it. And I mean,
Yeah.
you're essentially doing that, and
Yes.
you're doing it really well. I'm super impressed.
And you know, she has a great way of getting a client to just move on and us to get out of there pretty quick. Like
It's a good
nothing
excuse to
nothing
cut that
makes
conversation off.
nothing makes people say, "All right, see you later," like a crying baby. So it works to our benefit sometimes.
Yes, yes. And so doing large animal or a lot of farm animal
Yep.
work, and especially in this area,
Yes.
we've seen an influx in the number of people who decide that they want to have their own backyard farm animals, whether we're talking about just chickens or ducks, or if they want to start getting pigs, sheep, goats, you name it. A lot of people started talking about farm shares and co-ops and being able to have a little piece of an animal that could result in some meat or milk. And so now we have a whole bunch of people who don't really have a farming background kind of jumping into the deep end without their swimmies on. So that's what this episode is all about. We want to help people who are interested in having backyard animals, or a hobby farm, or if you're interested in rescue organizations. I mean, the list of people who get this idea of, oh yeah, I want to have farm animals. It's pretty long, and there's a lot to consider before taking that leap.
Yes.
So that's what this is all about. We're looking for your knowledge and expertise, so people who already do have backyard animals or are considering it can go in with the appropriate knowledge.
Absolutely. I jokingly say, but it truly is a fact that when COVID hit, I said God spoke over Manhattan and told them all to acquire 2 goats and 6 chickens and move to Connecticut. And so they did. And when it all was happening and people started with this, whether they want to do homesteads or whether they just wanted to have, pet livestock in the backyard or whatever, I said, give it a year and they're all gone. Yeah. And you know what? I was wrong. And I'm glad I was. I would say a good 40% of the people who truly were like, you know what? I want to raise my own food. I really want to try this. I want to get into it. Have not only stuck with it, but are thriving. And I think I really do, at the end of the day, think it's the coolest thing. Yeah. And for someone who came back to Connecticut, somewhere that's considered a very low farming state, who wants to do just farm animal medicine or horse medicine, I love it. Thank you. Thank you to everybody who's coming out and doing the homesteads and having the animals in the backyard, because you're allowing me to live my dream, right? So yes. At the end of the day, I'm so glad that it's here. But there are ways to do it well, and there are ways to do it not so well. So if anything, yes, in this episode, I'm so happy to be able to voice some of those opinions.
Yes. So preparation and education is everything. That's the whole point of the show, is making sure that people know what they're doing, what they're getting into. And so anybody who followed along in the 5 Freedoms episode, we're talking about the basic moral and ethical obligations that we have to uphold when we choose to bring an animal into our possession, or when we're talking about livestock, it's often confinement. So they're not free ranging.
Yes.
A little bit of an issue. Your neighbors might complain. And so people who are considering getting animals, whether we're just talking about some chickens or something that's a little bit larger, small ruminants, the first consideration should be, is this even feasible on my property?
Correct. So a lot of times I feel like people get the cart before the horse, and they acquired the animals because you were on Facebook and you saw some cute post about these little goats that need a home, or you went to Tractor Supply and came back with a dozen chickens. It's almost become very too easy to acquire livestock and poultry. And so you do it because it was really easy to get them. So it must be really easy to keep them, right? And unfortunately, that's not the case. So my biggest, first and foremost, is before you bring them home is, can you give them a home where you are? So land. What do you actually have to offer this animal? Because it's not a cat or dog that can live in your house or that you take on walks. And even though you can put a collar on a goat or even a harness on a chicken, as people will do, it's not necessarily what is appropriate and the best lifestyle for that animal.
Yeah.
So yes, you can walk your goats and your chickens, but they should at any given time be able to walk themselves.
Yes.
So they should be able to be outside in a appropriately fenced in area where they can do their natural activities, which is browsing if they're goats, which is grazing if they're sheep and cattle, which is being able to roll around in the dirt and peck on the ground if they're chickens. So if they're not able to do those natural habits that they're built to do, then you're really not doing what's best for that animal. So first and foremost, they need space.
Yeah.
There's always the question of how much space, and unfortunately, that is not a straight answer. It really depends on the species
And zoning.
And so I hate to say it, but it does come down to bureaucratic answers, is that you really got to look into your town and what your town suggests for that animal. Whether you can find that online or call into your town representatives, find it out yourself. But it really depends. And I would say don't take it lightly. I get a lot of calls from people who, have had donkeys or goats in their backyard for years, and now all of a sudden the town is saying they can't have them, and it's because somebody complained or somebody reported. Exactly. So protect yourself and do right by those animals and make sure that whatever your town says is the minimum, that should be the minimum.
Yeah.
Now, the minimum might not be the legal minimum might not be the appropriate amount for that animal. So you start first with what's the minimum. And then the question is, what animals and what are you doing with those animals? If they're just pets and you're going to let them out of their enclosure to go around your yard or walk them or, do whatever with them, or if they're meant to be taking down, eating the pasture, utilizing pasture, or if you plan on mostly using hay or cut hay as forage, then it really depends how much land you not only should have, but need.
Yes.
Right? So if you have, a dozen cows that you plan on putting out to pasture, you need acres and acres of land, because not only you're going to need to rotate those pastures, you need to keep them going. A dozen cows will eat down a dozen acres very quickly.
And that's grassland. We're not talking about forest.
Correct.
Or rocks.
Correct.
Or bodies of water where
Yes.
you're losing grazing space.
Yes. So, and it's not to say that if you want to have a dozen cattle, you can't unless you have hundreds of acres. You can, but you have to recognize that you're going to be buying in a whole lot more forage, and that you're going to have to have stronger fences, because they're going to be wanting to find other pastures.
The grass is greener
Correct.
on the other side. And we see, we've all seen pictures or videos of animals that are in a pretty nice looking pasture and they're still busting through the fence because it's a little bit nicer and easier to grab on the other side.
So that's where, again, unfortunately the answer is it depends, but it's a conversation to have.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite clients are the ones that contact my practice before they even get the animals, and they say, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Can you come out and assess my property and let me know if this is an appropriate space for them, and also what's the best way to utilize this space? Those are my favorite appointments because we get to build something together.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I want more than for my clients to be successful in whatever it is, whether it be a business, whether it be, a hobby. It doesn't matter to me. I want you to be successful. And the best way I can ensure that is from the get-go, right? So if we come out and we can see and plan together, we just set you up for success.
And so people can contact a large animal practitioner like yourself and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Can you come out to my property, look at what I've got, look at my facilities or where I would build them, and then guide me as to what I'm supposed to be doing. And then you just charge a consultation fee and then do you type up some sort of preparation manual?
Yeah. So that's what basically we'll go out and it's my favorite thing because the other thing I really try and hone in on with my clients is that what works on one farm or one property does not necessarily mean it's going to work on yours.
It's an individual basis.
Correct. And so that's where I feel like people will call me in after the fact and say, I bought all these goats and I saw on Instagram or on Facebook that this other homesteader does it this way. And I've been doing it that way and it's just not working.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is it's just not all properties, not all, not everything's the same. Your soil's different. Your land's different. The bugs and parasites that are on your property are different than that person's. And so it really depends. And so that's where for me to walk on kind of virgin soil and be like, this is what would work best here. Mm-hmm. We're able to reach your goals and do it in a way that you're not running in circles. You're not setting yourself back, tens of thousands of dollars before you even get started. Mm-hmm. We're really able to plan accordingly. And that's exactly what I do is I'll go out, we'll assess, we'll come up with ideas together. I'll say, this is the best place for this. I'll usually give people 2 or 3 options. So I'm not just going to say this is the only way. Yeah. I say like this, and this would work. A lot of times I say this is the gold, silver, bronze standard. And it's not to say that the bronze standard is a poor option. It's just gold. This is the best of the best. Bronze still going to work, just not as effective or as efficiently. Mm-hmm. So somewhere down the line, it might cost a little more. It might take a little more time, but that way we can really hone in on what your goals are and get it focused for that.
And more importantly, when somebody reaches out to you, not only are they looking for your support and guidance and getting prepared to get animals, but they're establishing a valid client-patient relationship with you.
Yes.
And that's something that we're having a big problem with. There's not enough veterinarians, especially those focused on large animal. So people who are making that leap and getting animals before they have a veterinarian might not be able to find somebody who's taking on new clients.
Yes.
And then you're stuck. You've got animals, and then most people, if you don't make those preparations, when they expect somebody to show up when there's an emergency. Mm-hmm. And you personally are to the point, especially you don't have any associates. You are a one-woman rodeo and you've got a couple of employees. So if somebody you've never spoken to before calls you on a Sunday night and they've got a farm animal that's in distress, you're likely to say, I'm sorry.
No, it's true. And I think that's something that's so hard for people to understand, but like, yes, back in the day, it used to be that all the farmers were entitled to that veterinarian, right? Mm-hmm. They could call him up. He or she would show up and take care of whatever emergency. Nowadays, it's different. And it's because there's just only so many of us, especially in the large animal world. I mean, there's so few and far between. The equine industry, that could be a whole nother conversation. But they say, I think it's for every 1,200 new horse owners, there's like not even a whole veterinarian that graduates from vet school. There's like 1 full equine vet that graduates each year. Mm-hmm. So, and in livestock, it's just as bad. And it truly is a lifestyle. Like, not to, go out on some like, martyr branch, but truly I am giving up a lot of my own freedom and, things because I want to do this career. And as much as I love it, it is a lifestyle and it is a choice. Mm-hmm. And it's always my choice. So if you're expecting me to always be right there, unfortunately, without a relationship, without knowing you, without having that, I'm not going to be that for you, and the other thing is it's a safety thing too, right? Like I have to, again, I don't have associates. I don't have anything. I have a 6-month-old. Like I have to make sure that where I'm going is I know the people, I know the location of the animals, I know the facilities, I know what I'm getting into before I just show up in the middle of the night.
And you bring up a really good point. You said the word facilities.
Yes.
And so part of making sure you've got the land, that you're legally allowed to have these animals in the first place, making sure they're fenced in properly, and then also fencing out predators, which is a big issue. You said you've had quite a bit of bear predation.
Yes.
And then also making sure that you have not only shelter for these animals, but that you have a place where a veterinarian can safely work on them. as well as if you have other animal care professionals like farriers, hoof trimmers, shearers. If
Yes.
somebody who's collecting, who's milking, like these are important considerations, and it's a safety
Yes.
factor.
It is. And it's the facilities aspect I try and harp on so much because yes, it is an investment. I try and keep away from saying that it's a cost or an expense because it's an investment. It will make you money to have that facility. So something like a cattle shoot. Yes, depending on how big you're going to go, it's going to cost you probably a couple grand. But that shoot to have those cattle is going to make it safer for your vet. It's going to make it safer for you. It's going to make it safer for your animal. It's also going to decrease the amount of time and personnel that you need to work on those animals. So
Yes.
now what could take, with no facilities, it's going to take me, a technician, and 6 of your buddies to try and get this animal restrained can be done with 2 people. And also myself, along with most large animal veterinarians, we charge our fees based on time.
Yeah.
So if I show up and the cow is caught and in the chute and I can finish whatever I'm doing in 15 minutes to a half an hour, it's going to cost you a fraction of what it's
Down
going
to
to be
economics.
if I have to chase your animal around, get it pinned down, sedate it, do all these things. That costs money.
Yeah.
So invest in the chute because it will save you money in the long run and you'll be
Yes.
able to do so much more with it.
I've definitely spent, back when I was a mixed animal practitioner, hours chasing animals through fields, and then the farmer acting like I was a monster when they got
Yes.
the bill. And it's like, my time when I was running through your fields, I wasn't able to go see another farm call that was urgent. And so therefore, I mean, time is money. And
Yes.
people forget that just because it's a farm animal, there's still an expense associated with that. We had a great example about everybody loves Highland cows. Now, if you don't know what they look like, they are floofy cows with a massive rack. I mean, huge horns on them, which means putting their head through a classic squeeze chute
Yep.
is not feasible because they can't fit through. So restraining one of them is a completely different ball of wax versus a dairy cow or a beefer.
Yep.
So those people who have these animals, I mean, it's dangerous too. If they
Yes.
turn their head, you can lose an eye.
Yes.
So that these are important considerations.
100%. And so once again, not everything you see on Facebook or Instagram is as easy
#blessed.
and real as it seems, right? So it's not to say that you can't have the cute, fluffy animals, but you need to know what it takes to have them. So if you want to have Highland cattle, great, but you need to have facilities that can hold them. It's going to cost more than if you were to have an animal without horns. They do have a higher level of danger because of those horns. And it's twice as important to be able to restrain them and actually put your hands on them because all that hair hides things.
Oh, they love to have really creepy, crawly, disgusting things like
Yep.
lice.
Yep. And so if we're not able to actually get our hands on them and look at them, we're going to be missing a whole lot of problems. Also, a lot of times they end up being super underweight because we can't tell because they're so floofy.
Yeah, can't put
And
hands
it's
on
not
them
until
and
you
feel
put
the
your
bones.
hands. Yep. And so always being able to have a way to restrain any type of animal is ideal, but especially the cute, fluffy ones.
Yes. Along with facilities, it's not just housing and protection from the elements and then working facilities, but also storage for food is a big issue. You have to feed these animals a lot of forage. So we're talking about hay, grains, and you have to make sure that it's stored properly so we're not dealing with mold.
Yep.
We're not dealing with vermin, which is a big issue.
Yep.
For those who are not familiar, leptospirosis is a zoonotic disease, which means that animals can give it to us, we can give it to animals, and it's very dangerous.
Yes.
It affects liver and kidneys. And so farms are considered high risk for leptospirosis because they draw on rats
Yep.
and wildlife.
Yep.
And therefore, everybody's getting exposed, not just the animals, but the humans that might be there too.
Right. And I think, I forget who it was that said it, but if you see one mouse or rat, that means you have a complete infestation. Yep. So the fact that you're not seeing them doesn't mean they're not there. It just means that you're not infested yet.
Exactly.
And when you see just one, know that it's pretty bad already.
Yes.
So, 100%. The other thing is bears. We mentioned them before with the
Yes.
fencing, but we have a huge bear problem in Connecticut right now, especially in the northwest part of Connecticut. And anything that could attract bears to get in, so grain bins, things like that, you really do want to make everything bear proof
Yes.
because if they come in and get the grain, they'll also come in and get the animals. So
Yes. So a lot of people think bears are adorable and super cute. I love them. I love watching them from afar. But I mean, I haven't been doing large animal practice now for over 8 years. And when I was transitioning out, I mean, I saw quite a few clients, goats, alpacas, and then we actually had a mini donkey that was
Yeah.
killed by a bear. That was
Yep.
a patient of mine. And it's no joke. And they will keep coming back if there's a food source.
yes.
And I mean, even if we're talking about raccoons and smaller predators, they'll get your chickens. I
Yep.
mean, I've seen
Absolutely.
raccoons can reach through chicken wire and grab a chicken and strangle it to death.
Yep. Yep.
So making sure that fencing is appropriate and we're actually taking action to make sure that we aren't having them on the property. And a lot of people don't consider that.
No. And two, from themselves, right? Like
Yeah.
I get a call at least a few times a year because somebody's goat got into the grain bin.
Yes.
Right? And that's
Over
probably
8,
over
which is an
8,
emergency.
which is an emergency. You know, your goat can die from ruminal acidosis or urinary blockage or, you know, any of the other things that can happen because they got into, you know, overate a huge grain load. And so having ways to manage that and keep everyone safe is a huge deal. So it's not only buying the feed, it's making sure it's stored properly.
Mhm. And then having enough room for it. So
Mhm.
we had an example. If you have a 1,000-pound horse, they're supposed to be consuming about 2 to 3% of their body weight in forage a day.
Mhm.
That is 20 to 30 pounds of hay.
Yes. Yes. And I think one of the things that I find frustrating, and I'm sure every vet will say so, is, you know, when I give a suggestion to someone, so if I see your horse and I say, oh, it's a little thin, so we need to feed them more. And I'm told, well, doc, do you know how much feed costs?
You're like,
I do.
Yeah, actually, I do.
I do, actually.
Do you?
Do you? And I
Yeah.
think that comes back kind of to the beginning of like budgeting and knowing what you're getting into, right?
Yeah.
So, perfect example, if an average horse weighing about 1,000 pounds eats about 20 to 30 pounds of forage or of hay a day, you know, depending on the bale, that might be half a bale, that might be an entire bale of hay
Yeah.
every day.
Not all bales are created equal.
No.
Some of them are really heavy, really dense, and then also the type of forage that is in that bale has different nutritional value.
And they're going to cost differently, and everything's more expensive. So say the hay you're buying is $10 a bale and your horse is eating a bale a day, that's $10 a day just to give your horse feed.
Yeah.
So that's $300 a month.
Yes.
And that needs to be considered. It does cost a lot of money. Having horses costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And if you're not able to afford it, that doesn't make you a bad person. It just doesn't make you the best person at this time to own a horse.
Yes.
And it's a hard pill to swallow.
Yes. And not only that, but because of a lot of climate change that we're seeing, the ability for farmers to produce hay is very seasonal. Some years it's perfect. We get a ton of rain, but not too much in the spring. And then the crop is really good as far as hay production. And then some years we have a drought or it continues to rain when the hay is supposed to be put up. And it drives the hay prices through the roof.
Yep.
I remember when I was graduating from veterinary school and leaving Colorado, the drought was so bad. People were trucking in hay from Canada.
Yep. Yeah.
And there was a mass dumping of farm animals. People with goats and sheep and backyard horses were abandoning their animals because they couldn't afford to feed them.
Yeah. Well, a similar thing happened, I want to say it was 4 years ago.
I remember that.
When there were huge, actually, I think it was snowstorms that wiped out a whole bunch of crops late in the year out west, and that destroyed a whole lot of where all our grain comes from. So that's why grain skyrocketed. And then there was a whole bunch of dump of cattle because people couldn't afford to feed them.
Yeah.
It happens. Also, the depletion of nutrients in the soil with, you know, the rain or droughts or this or that. So your forage might not be as nutritious as it once was, which means your animals aren't going to grow as well on them. And so you might need to supplement. And so you're right. it costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so it's not to say, again, that you can't do it, but you need to budget for it. And that's where, again, there's so many pieces to it, and there's so many different ways it can be done, but you want to be able to plan for it and know what you're getting into before you're feeding them.
Yeah. Yeah. And talking about planning and what you're getting into, people acquire these animals for different reasons. They think
Yes.
they're cute. They want to be a hobby farmer. They like the idea of having
Mm-hmm.
their own eggs or producing their own milk. And then there's people who are actually trying to make a go, and this
Yeah.
is going to be a business. And then one of the areas I struggle with the most are people who decide they want to become a rescue organization for all these displaced animals. And making sure that you know what you're getting into, regardless of your goals, is so important, because a big part of this also is the veterinary care.
Yes, 100%. And so I guess kind of going back to what you said. So I always say it's funny when I talk to people and I say, so why'd you get into this? Why do you have these animals? You know, I think they think that there's a right answer. Like I'm looking, and I really don't care. I have clients who, yes, they truly are like homesteaders. So they're here because they want to raise animals to be sustainable themselves. Maybe it's to also sell the produce and so make a business from it. Maybe it's because you just like the animals and you want them to be a hobby. Maybe it's for Instagram. And I say that not jokingly.
Yes, yeah.
I have clients who they have livestock and they take great care of them and they do, but really the primary, it is a business, but the business is because they do it, you know, for Instagram and for Facebook, and it's, you know, educational, it's this, it's that, but it's what it is. And that's okay. I'm not judging so long as you're doing it correctly.
So when we're talking about why people acquire animals, rescue organizations is an area where I've seen a lot of animal welfare concerns, because I think people are trying to do the right thing and they get in over their head and they have really no idea what they're doing as far as the costs associated with that.
Yes.
And when we're talking rescues, there's legitimate 501c organizations, meaning that they are registered with the state and it is truly a nonprofit. Versus people who are doing it out of the goodness of their heart and then getting caught up in the fact that, oh my gosh, this costs money.
Yes.
Now what do I do? Now, as a practitioner, what are your thoughts on these rescue organizations?
So I work with several rescues, some better than others. I would say the problem that I find is that when people say, you know, I rescued this animal, I rescued it. You took the animal from a bad situation where whatever was happening to it, and you brought it into another situation. And my question is the situation that you brought it to actually better in all ways than where it was? So if you took the animal from somewhere where the people couldn't afford to feed it or give it proper vet care, did you bring it into a situation where the horse or whatever it is receiving all the food it needs, all the exercise it needs, and all the veterinary care it needs because you can afford it? So if you take an animal from somewhere and just bring it to somewhere new where they can't get the needs met, you're not actually rescuing the animal. You're just moving it from one place to another. And I don't mean that to come off very harshly, but when I go out to see animals, 99% of the animals that are rescued need a huge amount of medical care, whether it be that they have chronic conditions that were never cared for, whether they are starvation cases, whether they are, you know, they need a lot of hoof work or farrier work or teeth work, or there's usually always guaranteed something that was neglected, and now it's not going to be fixed with one visit. It's going to take many visits, and also lots of food and also lots of care. It's going to cost a lot of money.
Yes, and one of the frustrations I see in small animal med, now that I'm doing hospice, are people who say, well, although I can't afford veterinary care, this animal's better off with me. They're not on the streets anymore. And it's like, I'd like to ask that question, like, are you sure?
Right.
Because, you know, for example, if you see a dog that's running loose and you choose to take it into your possession, into your confinement, is it possible that maybe somebody else who did have the funds and that could actually afford the veterinary care couldn't have ended up with that animal? Or if it went into a shelter or a rescue organization that was able to place it with a family that didn't have limitations. And so when people have that attitude, well, I'm doing my best, Like this animal's better off than like out in the streets or running loose in the wild. And it's like, I don't know that I agree with that. So
Yeah.
again, there is a moral and ethical obligation to make sure these animals' needs are being met
Correct.
in every regard. And when we take that on, just because you rescued it does not imply discount when it comes to veterinary care.
Correct. Just because you decided to take on this animal and make it your burden does not mean that it is now my responsibility to not charge my prices, to not have value in my work. Just because you're a rescue doesn't mean I am. It's not my job to rescue the rescue. Correct, right?
And we're bleeding heart empaths. Like, of course we care.
Of
course
course.
we want to help, but time is money. And if we are at your farm taking care of your rescue animals and you can't afford it and you're tying us up there, there's other people who are willing and able waiting on us to show up and take care of their
Right.
animals that aren't going to balk at all when we say this is what it costs.
And I would say, rather than if you truly are, you love animals and you want to rescue those that need help and you want to help those in need, what I would recommend is, if you are a CO, what is C1?
501c.
Yeah, 501c3. If you are actually a registered with the state, do fundraising.
Yes.
And get creative. There's grants. There's different ways. I work with a couple where they have some animals and they put on petting zoos, or they put on educational things for the public, or they do camps, or they do different things where people come and you can raise money, raise the money, have the money, and then reach out and trying to help the animals. So make sure you have the funds first to actually help the animal before you just bring this animal on a whim.
Yeah.
The second thing I would say is, if you don't actually have your own, join one. So find one that actually has the budget, actually does the fundraising, volunteer, be part of it.
Yeah.
There
Get
are plenty
immersed
out
in
there.
The environment
Right.
before you decide, I want to do this
Correct.
too, because a lot of people change their minds once
Correct.
they're in the throes of it.
Yes. And so I think there's so many ways that you can do it. But just because you brought an animal into your house, and I'm not saying that your heart wasn't in the right place, doesn't mean that you're doing the right thing for that animal. Especially like when you said it perfectly, somebody who has the means may have been able to step in. Yeah. And you're kind of keeping them from that opportunity.
And this was a great example. This was a client who was seeking an emergency euthanasia for a chicken recently. And this woman has a backyard flock. She's a really good client, loves her animals, and this is not about her at all. But when she asked if I was available, I was like, hey, just so you know, if I was available, it would be a house call emergency euthanasia, the same as I would charge for an animal of comparable weight, like a cat. And there's a lot of people who, when they get a quote for that, they're like, it's just a chicken, or it's just a rabbit, and it's like, well, that doesn't mean that it's cheaper because of the type of species that it is. The billing is based on a doctor dropping what they're doing, responding, traveling to your property, and we're still utilizing the same drugs, which are usually based on body weight, regardless of the type of animal. And so I think there's a big misconception that just because it's a farm animal or a food animal, that the veterinary care is cheaper, more affordable than it would be if we're dealing with somebody's really fancy show dog
100%.
or their hunter-jumper horse. It doesn't matter what type of animal it is. Time is money, and drugs cost money, diagnostics cost money, as does our education.
Correct. And along with that is, if there's certain tasks that you think, or if you're, I mean, it goes along with saying that, like, if you're a rescue, you just expect it to be cheaper, right? Same with, honestly, a lot of my, these farms are producers, people actually farming as a business. As much as I'm here to support you, it's not my job to lower my prices to make it more affordable for you. Yeah. If you're choosing to farm and produce animals, that's fantastic. I'm here to support you in every way, but this is the cost of my business.
Yes.
And so you need to budget accordingly. Just because it's not a pet doesn't mean that my services are cheaper. Yes. Just because it's a chicken doesn't mean it should be cheaper. If there are certain services that can be done, by you, the producer, or
You
by
need to
you, the
learn.
homeowner, learn how to do them and learn
Yeah.
how to do them appropriately. An example that I always use for people is hoof trimming, right?
Yes.
If you have goats, their hooves need to be trimmed. Some goats need their hooves trimmed once a year, and that's it. Some need them done every month.
Yes, especially if
And
there's
it,
an orthopedic problem and conformational
yes,
issue, the type of footing that they
the
have.
type of breed,
Yeah.
genetics play a role in it. The footing, right? So and again, it depends. It depends. And so there's nothing more frustrating when I go on a farm or someone's backyard and they've got goats and their hooves are horrifically overgrown or they're walking on their knees because they're so sore, and I say you need to trim the hooves. So you either need, I will show you how to do it, and you need to allot the time and have people help you or figure it out, but you need to be trimming these goats' hoods every month, or you need to pay for me to come out, and I'm told it's too expensive to have me out. Great. Learn how to do it yourself.
Yes.
I can't restrain them. I don't have time. It's inconvenient. Your goat shouldn't have to suffer. Your animals should, that freedom of comfort of having their hooves correctly trimmed should not be put aside because it's inconvenient or too expensive for you.
Yes, and a great example that's comparable in small animal medicine would be grooming.
Mm-hmm.
So dogs, everybody loves a doodle.
Yep.
And their coats will continuously grow and get matted. And it is expensive to go to a good groomer. I mean, they are a very underappreciated, undervalued service.
Yes.
And a lot of people are like, you just shaved them. How is it $200? And it's like the time and the effort that was put into that is important. And you should have thought about that before you purchased an animal that required regular grooming. And on that note, kind of like you're describing these goats that are walking around on their knees because their hooves aren't being trimmed properly, we're crossing some lines into neglect and cruelty when we are not providing basic needs for that animal to be healthy and comfortable.
100%. 100%. And that's where I think, I don't know what the disconnect is that people can see, an animal walking on their knees or limping because of something as manageable as hoof growth isn't being cared for. But that truly is neglect, and that animal is in pain, and it's because you're unwilling to either do the service yourself or pay for the service. So you need to choose. The options are pay for it or learn how to do it yourself. The option is not to ignore it.
Yeah.
That's not an option.
And doing nothing is wrong is one of my favorite things. When people reach out to me, they're like, hey, this is what's going on. I don't know what to do. And it's like, well, you either go to a hospital or you let me come and euthanize them. Sitting there and staring at them when you know there's a problem and doing nothing is wrong.
Right. And I think that's where a lot of, vets will have frustration and see burnout is when we constantly have to hear that, they can't do something as simple as trim hooves because either it's inconvenient or it's too hard or it's too expensive.
Yeah.
No one's making you have goats.
Yes.
No one's
It's a choice.
It's a choice, right? And it truly is a privilege, not a right, to have animals. And it's a privilege to put these animals in your home and to become the only one responsible for their welfare. And if you are not able to meet all of their needs, whether it be paying for them to be met or doing them yourself, then you shouldn't have them.
Absolutely. And a lot of people get a little bit of a pearl clutching gut check with that, but it is the reality of the situation. And a lot of these rescue organizations exist because somebody did that already with this animal.
Right.
And then it was neglected, and then now it needs another new home. And we do see some animals that are literally just getting bounced around from rescue to rescue, or farmers that are going out of business and selling off their entire herd or flock because they couldn't make a go of it. And I've always said that the best medicine happens before there's ever a problem, preventative. And that's, again, why you're here. You do these consultations. You want people to establish a relationship with you before they even get an animal. and then make sure we're doing anything and everything we can, because money is everything and time is money. So the more prepared you are, the better. And sometimes the upfront costs are a little bit more.
Yes.
I mean, there are educational classes that people can go out and take and learn how to do things like trimming. And,
Oh, yeah.
And trying to think of another example. I had a dairy farmer who would have me come out to disbud calves. And for those who don't know, disbudding, a lot of animals that do grow horns, when you intervene early on, you can perform a procedure that prevents the horns from growing, because they can basically become weapons against the other animals in the herd. And there's a lot of injuries and damage associated with that. And they were like, this is gross. Like, we don't like this. We don't want to do it. They also didn't like the bill when I had to keep coming out to perform this repetitive procedure that I was willing and able to teach them to do.
100%. And again, it's not that you got to just, that's what there are definitely areas of gray all over the place, but in this case it's black and white. You need to choose one. And two, with I think it just made me think of, when you acquire animals, know what you're getting into, not just in the immediate, but what it's going to look like 5 years down the road. Some of the biggest clients I have issues with are pig owners, and not production pig owners. They're never a problem. Backyard pigs, pet pigs. Pigs are awesome. I love pigs. Honestly, there was a small moment in my life I actually thought about just being a swine vet.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right?
Hurt just thinking about the screaming.
But I love pigs, but pet pigs are, unfortunately, I hate to say it, they are some of my least favorite clients and patients. And the reason isn't because of the pigs, and it isn't because of the clients, it's because of the lack of knowledge. There are no mini pigs. Oh,
the people who've been thinking they're going to get a micro mini pocket pig, and then it becomes 300 pounds.
So, yes, there are some pigs that stay small, but really it all has to do with diet. The pigs, no matter what breed, will grow until their last day. They continuously grow. That is what pigs do. So in order to keep them small, you have to feed them less and less and less. And a lot of times I deal with clients who, they have this 400-pound potbelly or coon pig that was supposed to stay under 50 pounds. And it's ripping up their house, or it's destroying their yard. That's the other thing. Pigs do not belong in the house.
No, they don't.
And I know people are going to come at me for that, but pigs do not belong in your house. They naturally need to rut and dig and roll, and that is a whole part of their enrichment that is taken away when you force them to live within four walls. They are meant to be in the dirt. So it's, the other thing is, there are certain commercial breeds of pigs that have been domesticated and bred to do just that, grow. Just grow.
Yeah, massive.
And
what's the biggest pig you've ever seen weight-wise?
Oh, 1,000 pounds. Over 1,000 pounds even.
So that's bigger than an average
the thing
horse.
is, that animal was at a rescue. And that animal had horrific arthritis and had toes that were always overgrown and couldn't be trimmed. And this was at a legitimate rescue where they would pay whatever needed to be paid to take care of this pig. But the problem is, an animal like that is literally built to be raised for meat. And so if kept past its normal timeline, they get so big that they cannot sustain their own weight. I see it a lot with rescued meat birds. So these are chickens that are meant to grow to their full capacity within 6 to 8 weeks of life and then be slaughtered. So at 2 years, these birds will snap their own femurs because they can't withhold their own weight. They will die of heart attacks, heart failure, because they can't endure their own weight. I've seen birds that literally people have kept going and they can't walk anymore because they're so large, and the people just think they're doing right by the animal because they're literally just carrying it around and feeding it. That's not fair for that animal.
It's not good quality of life.
No. And so, again, it's not that your heart isn't in the right place, but you have to consider, are you doing the right thing for that animal, for what this animal's meant to be? And now there could be a whole conversation of, is it right that we've bred animals to be, of that situation?
It's happening whether
It's
you like
happening
it or
whether
not.
you like it or not.
Yeah.
And you're not going to change it in that one animal's lifetime.
No.
So know what you're doing, and listen. When we say enough's enough, it's not because we're heartless. It's not because we don't care. It's because that animal is suffering, and it's not going to change. And just know what you're getting into.
Yeah. I have another great example, and I'm sure you could appreciate this too. I remember the first time I saw a Holstein steer. So what a steer is, so normally when somebody is raising dairy cows, the black and white cows that everybody's familiar with, usually the male calves are sent off to become veal or become beefed out. So we raise them to a certain point and then slaughter them. But what some people have done is they castrate it so it's not a bull anymore. And they are massive. Massive. I mean, I remember the first time I was face to face with one, I was like, I'd never seen a cow that big in my life. And it was at a rescue. And it just chilled out. And it was so tall that like the goats walked underneath it. I mean, it was something like out of like Paul Bunyan.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that steer was debilitated with arthritis by the age of 4.
Yep. And I've dealt with similar things, and they need their hooves trimmed, or and they don't fit in the chutes. They don't fit in, right? And so then you end up having to spend more money to find the right person who's got the right equipment to be able. So again, it's not that it can't be done, but it's going to cost more money, and the facilities are going to be different, and you just need to be willing to do that, or say, okay, this animal's in pain, we need to put them down. But the option of just ignoring it or saying at least they're not dead is not appropriate.
So even though I'm a hospice veterinarian primarily in the small animal realm, when I was doing mixed animal practice, I felt as though I saw a lot of animals that I believe were suffering. But the problem was it wasn't really resonating with the owner of the facility because they only saw these animals twice a day. And the animal was doing a lot of suffering in between those feedings and overnight, where when we're talking about a dog or a cat or somebody that lives in the house with us, we're staring at them a lot longer, far more hours throughout the day, and we're seeing, therefore, more suffering. And it kind of clicks. Especially when, again, we're talking about these rescue organizations. I believe there's people who are keeping animals alive that are in a lot of pain. There's a lot of suffering on. They have no quality of life. And there's this like, but I'm saving them. I'm keeping them alive, where euthanasia means good death in Greek. And I believe in it. I live it every day. I rest my head on a pillow at night knowing I did the right thing because I'm advocating for an animal. I'm preventing and ending suffering. Now, I imagine that you're running into a lot of issues like that in your daily practice.
Yeah. So one thing that I always find so interesting when talking to clients and kind of like the animal-human relationship is we as humans, we are just trained to fear death.
Yes.
Right?
It's very cultural, too, in this country.
And honestly, death is not the enemy, especially when it's timely, especially when it's literally time. And the other thing that I feel like people they get, death is the worst thing that could happen. And animals don't see that, right? They don't know of that being wrong.
They have no concept of tomorrow.
No, they don't.
They live in the moment.
They live in the moment.
To survive to the next.
Correct. And so I try and explain to people that if you don't know about tomorrow, and all you're doing is living in that moment, if that moment is nothing but pain, and you don't understand when that pain is ending or why it's there, you're living literally in that moment. So your entire concept of life is of pain and fear, pain and anxiety, because you don't know where the pain's coming from and when it's ending. That's not fair, right? And so, yes, there are times when we can see, like, your dog has a broken leg, Okay, we can say, okay, that dog might not know when that pain is going to end, but we can say we know that is a fixable issue and there is a end to the pain, and it will improve. When we have something like a severe arthritis or an animal with a incurable tumor or something
The
where
prognosis is not good.
there is no foreseeable end. If in that moment your animal is in pain, then that's it. That's its beginning and end of the day. The other is, especially with livestock, like I think with cats and dogs, like we personify them, but they've almost become so much more personified because of how they're raised, right?
Yes.
They're with us. They react to us. We can kind of read their language. They can read ours.
They're more tolerant to the nonsense that we do to help them heal and keep them around.
Yes.
Versus, you've got a goat that's uncomfortable and you're shoving meds in it or stabbing it with a needle to administer medication to keep it comfortable and keep it alive. They're responding to that treatment very differently and not usually as accepting or understanding as a dog or a cat that lives with us.
Well, right. And also, you're going to be more attuned to when your dog is in pain than, say, your goat. I also try and remind people that a lot of these livestock, well, all of them, they're not predators, they're prey.
Yes.
And so their entire instinctive existence is to not show pain and to not show weakness, because if they do, not only will the predators get them, but their herd or flock will leave them behind. Yeah. So they are programmed to not show any problems. So if your goat or chicken or whatever is showing you a problem,
it's bad.
It's way worse than it looks. It's way worse than it looks. Your limping goat probably has a really bad infection or could even have a fracture, and they're just not showing it. Your animal that is dropping feed probably has a horrific tooth abscess or no teeth left in their head or something really bad, and they're just starting to show you now. People will say, like, oh my gosh, I just walked in and my chicken was dead. How did this happen? Well, she probably has had a lash egg or something going on for 9 months and just never showed you.
Yeah.
And it's not that you missed it, it's that they don't show it.
Correct.
So that's where, when you do start seeing the signs, it's so important to not just play them off, but to have your veterinarian come out and assess and make sure, is this something that is fixable? Is there an end to the pain and the suffering, or is there not? Is this something that's not going to get better? And if it's not going to get better, what are we winning? Who's winning by keeping that animal around if every day all they know is pain?
I use the example a lot that there are true medical emergencies that result in death or euthanasia that are unavoidable. We have no idea it was coming. All the preventative medicine and being the best pet parent in the world or caretaker is not going to stop this. But then there are animals that we know. They have a diagnosis, even if we don't want to hear it, and it's sad and awful. And so I use this analogy that the train is on fire and it's heading towards a cliff.
Yeah.
And why are we waiting for that train to get to the cliff and go off the edge?
It's already on fire.
It's on fire. We know it's happening. It's irreversible. The prognosis is not good no matter what we do, no matter how much we love them, no matter how hard we try. And sometimes the best thing that we can do is give that animal permission to not suffer anymore and end it. And I'd say people always ask me what the hardest part of my job is, and they assume it's performing the act of euthanasia, of taking a life, and it is not the case at all. I've walked into people's homes who these animals know who I am. They smell my bag and they're like, "Lady with the drugs, let's do this." Animals, I've been forewarned, are scary, aggressive, definitely going to bite a veterinarian. They barely tolerate their owners touching them, and they let me sedate them. And those experiences have given me that sense of peace and knowledge of knowing that they aren't afraid of death and dying, but they are afraid of being debilitated, of being in pain, of being dependent on anybody else, because that's just not their nature.
Correct.
And so it's really tough when I see people that are they're hanging on for the wrong reasons, and they can't accept that it's coming. And again, especially when we're talking about food animal or livestock, animals that we're not in our home, that we're watching all the time, there's a line that can be crossed where I think it's neglect. and or
100%.
abuse.
And I think too, there's a lot of people who, especially with food production animals, again, they have been domesticated to grow and be raised for harvest, for food. There is a biological timeline that we have, whether because humans made it or not, whether you like it or not, it is what it is. And so, like we talked about with the 1,000-pound pig or the 2,000-pound steer who get debilitating arthritis, they could have lived to 2 years old, been a very appropriate, sustainable weight, had a lovely 2 years of life, living out on pasture, doing what they're meant to do, having plenty of access to food and water. And then one day they're harvested, they're slaughtered. And people hate that. They hate that because we took their life. But the thing is, we also gave them a beautiful life, and then we never allowed them to feel pain. They didn't develop the arthritis. They didn't feel the pain. They didn't have the bad hooves. And so it's not to say that they can't live lives, but there's also ending their lives for food, so long as the lives that they had were they had everything they needed. It's not a bad thing. Yeah. It's not a bad thing, and death is not the enemy. And I agree with you. People always, I wanted to be a vet, but I could never put down animals. And I tell people all the time, I think it's one of the most beautiful parts of my job, that it is a gift. We get to ensure, or it should be, that we get to ensure that these animals never see a bad day. Yeah. Right? We only good days. And that's so awesome. So I think if you're going to, there's that lovely quote, what is it? If you have livestock, you got dead stock, right? Yeah. But in a way, yes, there is the, it doesn't have to be as blunt as that. But if you have any type of animal, you have to know that by giving them a good life, you should also know that eventually, at one time, there will be your responsibility to give them a good death.
Yeah. And you don't want it to just be death. You don't want it to be awful and painful and an emergency. I always say euthanasia shouldn't be an emergency unless it truly is
something
an
that was
emergency
unavoidable.
Situation.
Yep,
exactly,
100%.
Like I talked about it. The train wasn't on fire.
Right.
We didn't know it
just happened.
Exactly.
Bad things happen. Absolutely.
Yeah. And another thing that I love to say is we're all dying at different rates and for different reasons. It's completely unavoidable. But to be able to say you don't have to suffer into that end point is so important.
And we do have that control, and I think it's not something people should fear.
One thing that I loved is I got to work with Temple Grandin. If you don't know who Temple Grandin is, she is incredible, and I think she has made some of the largest strides in the realm of animal welfare of anybody. And she focuses primarily on livestock and handling facilities and making sure that these animals that we're raising for our needs, whether that's food, fiber, leather, whatever, if we are raising them, we have this obligation to do it correctly, but also in slaughter. And somebody asked her when she was lecturing to my veterinary school class how she handles people who are vegetarians or vegans, and PETA is a big one. How she deals with those people, because she gets a lot of hate because people are accusing her of advocating for raising animals. And her take was, she was like, this is legal. This is how we feed people. Yep. Like it or not, you are never going to convert all the humans on this planet to vegetarianism. It's not feasibly possible. Can't happen. But what we can do is accept that, all right, we can't eliminate the consumption of meat. But what we can do is make sure that we're doing it ethically. Correct. And humanely. And that's where she's focusing her energy. And what she has done has really been remarkable.
For the whole industry. And to, I know, again, but the same people who, may fight the slaughter of any animal will also say that the people doing the slaughtering of the animal, the producers raising them for meat, don't care about those things. 100% untrue. Yeah. Untrue. Temple Grandin has been at several of the American Association of Bovine Practitioners conferences that I go to. So that's for just cow vets of all over the country. She speaks at almost every one of those conferences. She goes to rancher conferences for ranchers and producers all over the place talking about these things. And there's no one more interested and invested than the producer.
Absolutely.
And it's because these people want to make sure that their animals are raised correctly and that they are doing everything most humanely. So it's a huge thing, and she has made such huge progress. And it's, if you haven't looked into her, you should, because she's got some very interesting work.
Absolutely. Now, I mean, we can go on forever and get into commercial medicine, commercial farming and livestock, but I think that's a whole other episode about where our food comes from. But I think, a really important thing is just acknowledging what you said. So producers want to make sure that their animals are happy, because happy is healthy, and healthy is productive, and productive means they can generate more income and profit. And so I know that there's a lot of really horrible, ugly, scary videos of people abusing and neglecting and doing terrible things to animals. I think they're in the minority.
Yes, very much so.
And they're sensationalized. Just like you, my entire education, all the farms I've worked on, all the producers I've worked with, they are invested in making sure that animal has a good quality of life, because that comes back economically in the long run.
Yes, 100%. Absolutely.
So, again, we'll talk about that at another time, but we need to consider that some of these animals are removed from commercial farming and putting into these rescues or into these backyard situations. I tend to see a lot more neglect and sometimes unintentional abuse in those scenarios.
That's a perfect way to say it, is unintentional. And I'm not sitting here saying anybody who rescues a pig from market is a horrible person. Absolutely not. Your heart and your intentions are always in the right place. But recognize that there's going to be different challenges you don't expect with those animals, and you have to be willing to listen
to your veterinarian.
Absolutely.
So I think that's an excellent place to stop. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and joining us on this episode with Dr. Leah Dauten of Tri-State Veterinary Services. She is a large animal practitioner serving Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New York. If you're remotely interested, I highly recommend contacting her practice. And that's it. Thank you so much for thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.